Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a law that grants children in foster care an education that is intentional about getting them a high school diploma. This is a big deal. I want to shout out Michigan for this because up until this point, the state had put foster children into schools with the sole requirement being that they offer, quote, appropriate educational services. Now, appropriate educational services is vague. What does appropriate education mean for a foster kid? Is that a certain kind of educational service? Is that a certain kind of curriculum? Is that a certain kind of discipline policy? Are you committing to a certain kind of small group environment for learning? Are you worried about their psychosocial development? What does it mean? And because it's unclear, many students enrolled in coursework that didn't apply toward graduation. They took stuff that was supposed to meet their needs, but the stuff didn't meet the graduation needs. Now, under this new law, it's going to be different. The state will need to provide these children with an education that they say prioritizes meeting graduation requirements. It also demands facilities to enroll students within 5 days of placement. This law is the third part of a 3-part bill that was introduced by Stephanie A. Young. The other two were signed last month. They required the state to track and report data on foster kids' educational progress, and it tasked the Michigan Department of Education with overseeing educational programs. Why is this important? Because foster care is a system that we must reimagine, that we must critique, that we must reshape. What do I mean? A lot of times we think of the foster care system as an act of government largesse or generosity or support or philanthropy. But unfortunately, the foster system is a system that too often preys on our children, Black children, brown children. Too often, the foster care system doesn't lead to healthy outcomes. It leads to very dangerous and problematic outcomes. When you look at what we call the foster care to prison pipeline, this is exactly what you see. First of all, as many as 5% of all children are placed in foster care at some point by age 18. 9% of Black children end up in foster care at some point. 11% of Native American, American Indian students and Alaska Native children end up there. So the numbers are very, very high for Black people, but there's also, and brown people, but there's also a high correlation between foster care and crime. Did you know that close to 1/5 of the prison population in the US, remember, this is the largest prison population in the world. America incarcerates 1/4 of all the prisoners in the world. 1/4 of all global prisoners are right here in the United States. So that's a big number. We're talking about 2.2 million prisoners right now in the United States. Well, 1/5 of them are people who were former foster care students, foster care children. And 70% of youth who exit foster care as adults, meaning you go through foster care, you finish at 18, you age out of the system. By age 26, 70% have been arrested at least once. If you go through foster care for your whole life, there's a good chance that you will be arrested. If you go to foster care, you are more likely to have a negative outcome in so many ways. 90% of youth with 5+ foster placements are going to enter the justice system. Youth that are placed in group homes are 2.5 more likely to get involved with the justice system. So foster care is not what a lot of people think that it is. Foster care is not a savior system. It's often the state coming in and snatching kids from homes that could benefit from support. So in other words, yes, mom needs support. Yes, mom and dad need support. Yes, this house doesn't have the ability to meet the child's needs, but instead of taking the kid out of the home and putting them in the system, why don't we invest in them in the home itself? That's the reasonable thing, but we don't do that. And schools become an extension of that. And so this new bill in Michigan is saying, look, let's make sure we keep an eye on these kids. Let's make sure we invest in their educational progress. Let's make sure that the school is tracking what's happening, because a lot of times you could be in a school as a teacher or as a fellow student or whoever and not even know that the kid is in foster care. They know somebody, mama sends them to school every day. They know somebody comes and gets the report card, but they don't realize the kid is in the system. And so this is why we have to pay incredibly close attention to it. That's what Farrah's talking about when she says they're set up for failure. They're absolutely set up for failure. And the numbers, Zencat, absolutely are grim. And so we really have to imagine a system that doesn't take foster kids from families, doesn't take children from families, but instead invests in those families. That's just my thought. But this bill is at least a gesture in the right direction.